Good evening and welcome to the Township of Woolwich Council meeting on April 25th, 2023. We are now live on YouTube. I'll start with a roll call of council. I'm Mayor Johnson, present and chairing this meeting. Councillor Bryant.
Present.
Councillor Burgess.
Present.
Councillor Cadeau.
Present.
Councillor Grant.
Present.
And Councillor Schwint has sent regrets for this evening. Can I have a motion that council reconvenes in open session, please? Moved by Councillor Bryant, seconded by Councillor Cadeau. All those in favor, and that's carried. Thank you. I acknowledge the land on which we live has been here from time immemorial and that Indigenous people have lived here from time immemorial. I thank the Chinantan, also called Attawandaron, the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee people who have lived here and cared for this land and who continue to share and steward the land with us. May we together learn to care for each other, our flora and fauna, and the land that sustains us. Please join me in a moment of silence before we start. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we have no items to come forward from closed. We do have minutes from Committee of the Whole of March 28th, Council from April 4th, and Committee of the Whole from April 18th. Are there any errors or omissions? Can I have someone move them? Councillor Grant, seconded. Councillor Burgess, all those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. We don't have a public meeting today, but we do have presentations from Climate Action Waterloo Region on the Community Greenhouse Gas Reinventory Report. And we have here with us today, Tova, virtually. Welcome, Tova. And Kira Chisholm, Sydney Sandluck, and Mary Jane Patterson. And I'm going to let Tova start things off today.
Thank you so much, Mayor Johnson. I'm just going to share my screen. Let me know when you can see them. All good?
Yes.
Great. So thank you so much for having us today. I'm so sorry I couldn't be there in person. I had multiple council meetings this evening, and so virtual is the way to go. My name is Tova Davidson, and I'm the Executive Director at Sustainable Waterloo Region, and I'm here, well, there with my cohorts, as you introduced, Mayor Shantz, Mary Jane Patterson from Green Solutions, and Kira and Sydney from the Climate Action Team. And I'm going to start us off by giving my annual update from Sustainable Waterloo Region, and then I'm going to pass it over to Kira to do the update from Climate Action. So we recently had our evening of recognition. It was nice to see some of you there, and we've had some updates from the community. You know, when we started to look back at 2022, what we saw at SWR was that it was a new normal year. And we talked about that a lot, and not just at SWR, but around the whole community, that we're now in a new normal. But that new normal is actually, we see it as a hearkening to the R's. If you think about sustainability and the ways that a lot of people think about it, it's the 3 R's of reduce, reuse, and recycle. And in fact, if you Google the R's of sustainability, there's now 7, 8, 9 different words they choose. There could actually be probably many, many more, because as the team at SWR thought about how we have re-engaged or reached further or retrofitted or replenished, we saw this as a year of rejuvenation and re-encouragement. And so we were really excited to share some of the things that happened. These are just a few of the statistics of the impact over the 2022 year. We planted 6 microforests, which was equivalent of 600 trees, and I'll talk about those. We now engage a lot more communities. We've had a lot of tons committed from organizations like the Township. Our commitment number was almost 74,000 tons being reduced, but they actually reduced more than 86,000 tons, and we're getting close to that 20,000 cars off the road equivalent. And we're really excited for a lot of the work that we do here at SWR and feel that it's an honor to do the work, and we're so excited for the trajectory that we're on. So just to share a few things, and I'm not going to go into this slide too much here because Kira is the expert and she's going to dive deeply into the climate action work. But this is a really important foundation, and first thing to keep in mind when you think about everything else is that we as a community have an 80 by 50 goal. And so there's a lot of work to be done. And these next projects I'm going to tell you about, our programs, are just part of that trajectory towards that 80 by 50 goal. SWR works in partnership with the region of Waterloo to deliver the TravelWise program. And it's actually kind of like an employee assistance program for commuting. So think about it as, how do you get your employees to have a choice other than driving alone to work? It can be carpooling, it can be active transportation, it can be using transit in some cases. And we have an emergency ride home reimbursement program, so no one gets stuck if they have to get home in a sick kid situation, for example. And what we found is that, for example, these organizations really do engage in a lot of really interesting ways that they support their employees. During Bike Month in 2022, with 752 bike trips logged. And those stats down the side of that slide are really interesting. It was more than 4,000 kilometers traveled, 131,000 calories burned. I think that's an interesting one. But the most important being that ton of CO2 saved. In our Impact Network program, which is the one where we help individual organizations look at their operating emissions and impacts with waste and water, we really did see that we've come to a place where the community, and the corporate community specifically, is now understanding the role it plays in reaching our climate targets locally as well as nationally and internationally. 80% of the members that we work with actually are very aware of all the things that they can do and the role that they play in reaching the community climate targets. And what we find is that we've got high engagement once again, re-engagement, if you will, to get that, that work happening. In fact, what we found was that we had a lot of organizations coming to us asking for our help, where in the past we were going out to them saying, we can help you if you need help. We had 12 new and returning members in 2022 alone. We also are so proud of the work that we did with the Evolve One building in partnership with the Cora Group. And they are the builder and owner of this building. And for those who don't know the Evolve One building, it is Canada's first net positive multi-tenant office building. It's located at the David Johnson Research and Technology Park. I am sitting in the building at the moment, and it is certified by the Canadian Green Building Council as the first net positive multi-tenant office building in Canada. But the very unique thing, besides all of that that is happening with this building, is that we are able to report the numbers. So the building is 110,000 square feet and uses about 800,000 kilowatt hours of electricity. It is an electric building. But each year you can see those numbers down the side, what kilowatt hours it generates. So it's between 106 and 123% of the energy that it needs, proving that it actually is a net positive building. And I learned a statistic today that the energy cost for this building savings would be about $250,000 a year. So pretty remarkable and a great business case for sustainable buildings. Of course, there is the microforests, which I touched on quickly. Microforests are small areas of what we think of as undevelopable land, things we're never going to make into something else. And what SWR does is works with the host organization, as well as volunteer organizations to plant and donors to be able to renaturalize some of these spaces. Some of them are in corporate spaces, some of them are in schoolyards. And we're planting in about a 50 by 100 square foot space, about 100 trees, and they're all native species. So excited for the partnerships that have grown out of this and the incredible work that's been done. And I'm so excited to share that we have another 11 going in 2023. 2 went in this weekend on a very rainy Earth Day, but it's good for the trees to be planted in the rain. That's the end of my presentation. And I'm going to hand it over to Kira, who is there in the room with you, and she's going to tell you more about what's happening with climate action.
All right. Is it possible to switch to the other slide deck? Thank you. Okay. So just as we get get started, thank you so much for having us here tonight to present on our Progress Our Path, our 2019 and 2020 Greenhouse Gas Reinventory Report. The next slide, please. So I won't go into too much detail about who Climate Action Waterloo Region is, but just that we are co-led, as Tova mentioned, by Sustainable Waterloo Region under executive leadership of Tova Davidson. And joining me here tonight also in person is Mary Jane Patterson, the Executive Director of Reap Green Solutions, our other co-leading organization. Working collaboratively with all 8 municipalities, as well as organizations in the community and engaging the community widely on climate action initiatives. If we can go to the next slide. So what brings us here today is that back in 2013, our community did the first greenhouse gas inventory, and emissions came from 5 sectors: transportation, homes, workplaces, waste, and agriculture. And this led to Waterloo Region's first climate action plan to achieve a 6% emissions reduction between 2013 and 2020 based on 2010 baseline year. And so that's approximately an 842,000 ton reduction over those 7 years between 2013 and 2020. So we're here today to close the chapter on that first community climate action report and the progress since we last came to council with the first iteration of our Progress Our Path report in 2017. All right, the next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so how did we do? As I mentioned, in 2017, we released the first iteration of this report using 2015 data and reported a 5.2% emissions reduction, very close to that 6% target. We saw an increase in transportation emissions and decreases in both homes and workplaces. Much of this reduction is attributed to the closure of provincial coal power plants. And so some great efficiency and consumption gains in homes and workplaces, but largely as a result of that decision in decarbonizing our grid. Due to the abnormal circumstances of 2020 and the drastic impacts that the COVID-19 pandemic had on our community, we conducted a reinventory for 2 years. So 2020 to look at the impacts in that year and close the chapter on that 6% target, but also 2019 to look at a year that most closely resembles business as usual. And so the full report is attached to this staff report and to the council agenda, this presentation as well, and available at climateactionwr.ca. So in 2019, we see that we maintained some of the emissions from the 2010 baseline year at 3.7%, but this is an increase from that 2015 gain of 5.2%. In 2020, we see a decrease of 14.4%, which more than doubles the emissions reduction target of 6%. But what 2019 shows us is that without the drastic impacts of the pandemic, we would not have been likely to reach our 6% target in 2020. Next slide, please. So looking at a little more detail, we continue to see that transportation of goods and people is the highest emitting sector, followed by the workplaces or ICI sector, second, and our homes and residential sector, third. While we did experience an upward trajectory of emissions since 2015, we are encouraged to see that our community emissions are not growing at the same rate as our population growth, demonstrated in the per capita emissions at the top of the graph there. In 2010, the average carbon, the total absolute carbon averaged over the population of our community was at 8.4 tons per person. In 2015, down to 7.5, and despite a slight increase in 2019, still lower at 7.1. So we still have a lot more progress to make as a community, but that was one encouraging thing to come out of the data. All right, and the next slide, please. So just a few key takeaways from the report, though I do encourage you to read the full report. So since 2010, as I mentioned, our emissions from transportation remain the largest contributor and continue to increase despite gains made in fuel efficiency of our trucks, vehicles, and buses. So it is essential that we change the ways we move both goods and people throughout our region. Energy efficiency, fuel switching, and local energy generation provide a significant transformational opportunity for change across all sectors. So that is certainly something we should be focusing on. And finally, that there have been many promising initiatives that we expect to see, that we're only beginning to see the greenhouse gas reduction benefits of. We are encouraged by all the stories that are featured throughout the full report and the many, many more we were unable to capture without making the report 100 pages long. Those stories are certainly worth looking into. So where do we go from here is Transform WR. So we came to you in June 2021, and all 8 municipalities unanimously endorsed Transform WR, our community's long-term climate strategy to reduce emissions to our current target of 80% by 2050, and outlines actions to reduce emissions 50% by the year 2030. The results of our reinventory report underscore the importance of transformative climate action outlined in this strategy and strong collaboration across our entire region to reduce emissions. Each municipality has an important role to play and leads many of the actions in this strategy. In addition, our work at Climate Action continues to be raising awareness that this is everyone's strategy in our community and everyone does have a role to play, in continuing to reach out to community members and organizations across the region alike. So thank you so much for your time today. And Tova and I will field questions together along with Mary Jane. Maybe just clarify if it's a question for Tova's presentation or this one.
Thank you very much, Kira. And I'll just acknowledge Sandra Bray and Barbara Schumacher, who are in the audience too. Thanks for coming, ladies. Very interested in climate action in our community. So thanks for coming. Questions? Who wants to start? Councillor Cadeau.
Thank you, Mary. Through you, I'm not sure who I would direct this to, but maybe you, Kira. 2017 was the last time that we had an update. So this is the update that we're getting. Is it going to be a 5-year basis that we can expect status updates? And I would second that with a comment that there's concerns that if we're only measuring this every 5 years, 2030 is not even 2 cycles from then. How are we going to ensure that we're really driving those progress?
Yeah, thank you so much. That is an excellent question. So we are working closely with our partners at the region with who we conduct the reinventory with to increase the frequency that we can do the report. So we are hoping to be able to do it with much more frequency and maybe a shorter report that focuses on that tracking of the emissions with more frequency. So hopefully able to share that soon with how often we'd like to come. But that is something certainly we would like to see as well, to be able to do it more than every 5 years.
Can I also just jump in with that? Is that we are also working on the implementation of a tool that will be online so that you can see the progress of specific actions in the Transform WR strategy. So there is a list of 76, I think, actions in that strategy. And there is a tool that Kira and Sydney are working really hard on to have us to be able to look at where we are in each of those actions and to then have an understanding of the progress that's being made. While it won't give specific greenhouse gas numbers, it will be a good way to at least see what is moving.
Councillor Cadeau.
I'm not wanting to spoil an unveiling party, but do you have any idea on when that might be coming forward?
Yeah, so we are hoping in the next few months, as you might guess, it's quite a lot of information to collect across 78 actions. So working really hard to get that and hopefully having a first iteration of available publicly that might not have everything all at once. But certainly would give people insight to what we do have uploaded there and then continuing to add more information as we collect it. So I'm hoping we are just a couple months away from a public launch.
Just a follow-up comment to that, eagerly awaiting that. And I think a lot of the constituents here in Woolwich who are frequently asking, we want to do more. We want council to do more, recognizing that there is a delineation of roles and responsibilities here. I guess the comment in all of that is that Woolwich is very keen on making movement in 50 by 30. But in addition to that, the 80 by 50. So how can we really measure that meaningfully so that we can make change that we need to be made? And your presentations, I think, really capture the essence of what needs to happen. It's just a matter of taking those steps deliberately and not waiting too long until we get something perfect that's ready to move. But like you suggest, just get something out there and let's just start building upon that, I guess, is the comment that I would make.
Yeah. Do you mind if I respond to that? I think that's a great point, is not is progress over perfection and continually improving and making those gains. In addition, I think, what Transform does with unanimous adoption across our region and all municipalities is provides a really excellent opportunity for collaboration. If one municipality is doing something really well, let's share and collaborate and learn so that we can leapfrog ahead on projects and initiatives, so that strong collaboration will be crucial to meeting these targets as well.
Councillor Grant.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to the sorry, I'm drawing a blank on your name. I'm so
Kira.
sorry, Kira. David threw me off earlier when he called me Kira. I'm just going to blame him. I was wondering if you could maybe summarize a little bit about just how the COVID pandemic played a role in hitting that target and how we were maybe not going to hit that target if it weren't for the pandemic. I know it's touched upon in the report. I just think it'd be really helpful to summarize for those listening at home.
Yeah, absolutely. So a big impact was in our transportation. Without people traveling to work in single occupancy vehicles, we saw a really drastic change there and a lot of gains there. And so we are eager to know what we have sustained of those since the pandemic, particularly if people are working from home more. So in the inventory, this is measured by fuel sales. And so that's where it comes out as a decrease of fuel sales across passenger vehicles. And that's where we made most of the gains. Though there were also impacts to operations of buildings in the ICI and residential space as well.
I think just to follow up on that, I think the one thing that I thought was of note from the report was the discussion about how seismic change was able to take place in a short amount of time. And I think that you did a really good job of highlighting that we often talk about climate change and needing to make drastic change now. And when we compare it to the pandemic and the things we had to do, it's not as maybe unattainable as we maybe think it is to make that drastic change. Yeah. We highlighted that, in the face of existential crisis, we came together as a community and really flattened the curve and made sure that our most vulnerable were protected. And so what we can learn from that and apply to the climate crisis, I think, is equally a big opportunity. So thank you for highlighting that. But we, as I mentioned, we're really eager to see what impacts have been sustained and then take a look at how we can come together to accelerate the climate transition as well.
Other questions? Councillor Cadeau.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, this is probably more to staff, but I didn't want to miss an opportunity to ask this question with the expertise in the room. So just with respect to grants that we can access for some of these green initiatives, I know that has been something that we may not have taken full advantage of in the past. But can you speak to some of the strategies that we're employing to access some of those grants? And I suppose, if I can pose a question to some of the presenters, is there anything that you could offer us here in Woolwich that really could help us to maybe hold the pen on some of these proposals? Or do you help proposal or grant write for, some of the other municipalities or areas within Waterloo Region? So perhaps I'll start with David and have you answer that one, and then maybe we can go on.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so, with respect to grants in general, I mean, we always look closely at, grants that are available, the eligibility requirements, and for that matter, whether we have anything that lines up in our budget, operating or capital, to take advantage of. So that's the first thing. The other thing that we often have to look at is also whether we have the expertise and the resources to be able to execute, on what the grant is offering and in terms of what's available. So with respect to the grants process, it's those twofold key things that we're really always looking at is, are we eligible? Do we have things that align? And do we have the resources to be able to execute in the timelines that have been identified? I mean, outside of that, one of the things that we started looking at is there's a lot of companies, naturally, because of the amount of grants that are out there, that have started to offer to municipalities the opportunity to do grant writing for you. They also have platforms where they can also try to align grants that they know available with what's in our operating and capital programs. So we're just talking about that this week at senior management. Is there's companies out there that we should look at that can help with the grant writing, because it has become a very specialized area to be successful. And for that matter, we don't have one particular person that we can assign. It's spread out to be able to look at every possible grant. So it's sometimes things that are brought to our attention, and we do our best to do the research I talked about, but it is becoming a very specialized field. So I'll end by saying it's an area that we can always do better, but overall, maybe not. This is a new area. Overall, in my tenure here, we've been quite successful in securing grants. As I said, maybe not always in this sector, but infrastructure funding and that sort of thing. So I'll leave it at that.
I can add that our MP and MPP, the mayors meet with them fairly regularly as well. And we always ask them to sort of keep their eyes open for specific things. So this is something we'll have to remember to mention again next time that we're together with them. Mary Jane.
If I could add something, and Toby, you might want to add something too, but I did see something today from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities looking for feedback on how they can support municipalities more. So it might be one thing to just let them know what are the needs of rural communities and are they being met by what's coming out of the FCM right now. And then I'm going to speak a little with my REPAT about one that's come up to give you an example of how I think really being connected in our townships and in our community and through climate action and through the work we do is important when things come, because they come fast with a short timeline sometimes. And an example I'll give you is Natural Resources Canada that put something out for helping to support communities in adopting mass retrofits of identical housing, community housing. And we pulled something together quickly with some support letters that we got from Kitchener, but we're pulling a lot of people together to talk about energy poverty and being connected so we can be ready to respond when something like that comes out, with all of us saying our community is united on this need. That's just one example. And this was about, identical row houses of community housing that can be insulated from the outside with prefab panels. Tova, I think you might have an example to add too. And the main point I would say is, let's be ready to jump, because they move fast, those grants.
And they really go ahead, Tova.
Thanks for the throw over, Mary Jane. Indeed, there are opportunities, and just like Mary Jane was talking about with the residential retrofits, SWR is furiously trying to finish an application to NRCan to do some work to support the development industry locally, educate them on this sort of work, green building standards, the benefits of it, and to work as a concierge for deep energy retrofits for ICI and potentially multi-unit residential, like big high-rise towers, that sort of thing, to do deep energy retrofits and to take some of the burden of knowledge off of the people who are owning those buildings and to be able to support some of that. Of course, that kind of work is dependent on funding, much as it is for you, as it is for us as well. And one of the benefits of calling in remotely is I just sent a link to David with some opportunities from the Green Municipal Fund that Mary Jane was just talking about from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So it's in your inbox.
Go ahead, David.
Something you said, Madam Mayor, thought I should bring up too is the fact that you mentioned that we talk regularly with our MP and our MPP. The other thing that we're trying to do with the feds in the province is with the grant programs. They've gotten better over the years, but often their small and rural communities fund are for municipalities 100,000 or less. That sometimes puts us against small sized cities. So what we've suggested the feds in the province look at is actually lowering the population bar to maybe something more around like 50 or 40,000 and under, so that they could very specifically target true, pure rural township type funding programs. And I say this because affordable housing, it's the feds in the province are doing good work in terms of funding that they're making available for affordable housing. But when the money comes into a region of our size, the biggest need often goes right into the city centers, right? Whereas if the feds in the province would, on affordable housing or climate change, target for 50,000 and under, we're more likely to receive the support that we need to be able to advance the priorities in climate change, in affordable housing, and things that we don't have to compete against the larger centers. So I think, to answer Councillor Cadeau's question, I neglected to say, we also need some change in terms of some of the grant eligibility so that we're competing fairly in a certain key target market.
Ms. Freeze, I noticed you turned your camera on at one point. Did you have anything you wanted to add? Or have we more than covered it?
Yeah, I think that was a little while ago. I think we've covered it through a few of the responses there.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? No, I'm not seeing any, except for Councillor Cadeau isn't finished.
Well,
Go ahead.
you just never know. For me, it had to do with the data. I was wondering if you could just provide some clarity around how that data is captured and verified, because we're talking a lot about this gas reinventory. How is that gas actually measured? How do we know that we're making progress where progress is needed to be made? Is it self-reported by, individuals? Can you provide some clarity?
Yeah, absolutely. So when conducting an inventory, the decisions is somewhat based on the available data that we can reliably access to produce the baseline. And for each of those 5 sectors, transportation, homes, workplaces, agriculture, and waste, there are different data sources that are looked at. So as I mentioned in the transportation, that might be fuel sales for trucks, buses, passenger vehicles, and other transit systems. But then in homes, we look at access the data from the utilities on the energy consumption and the type of energy consumption, and then assign it a carbon equivalency to gauge the tons. So we know that natural gas has a higher emissions factor than electricity. And so we measure each of those fuel sources and create a carbon equivalency. And so there is a full data management manual available on our website that is in that is a companion report to this, where it breaks down what those scope 1 emissions that are captured and scope 2 emissions. So the both sources of direct emissions that we are able to track. But as with any inventory, they are not perfect. There is certain decisions that are informed by we follow the standards of them to make decisions about what we are tracking and measuring against.
Thank you. Okay, I think that comes to the end of our questions. Thank you again very much for coming this evening and for all the work you do. And we look forward to working together in the next years and months as we look to how we can make progress on our climate action. So thank you again to Tova Davidson, Kira Chisholm, Sydney Sandlook, Mary Jane Patterson.
Thank you so
for
much.
coming in. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, we have no delegations registered this evening and no unfinished business. We do have a number of items on the consent agenda. Is there anything anyone wants to remove? If not, would someone like to move the consent agenda? Councillor Cadeau, seconded by Councillor Grant. All those in favor? Thank you very much. That takes us to staff reports. And I will turn the meeting over to Mr. Brenneman to talk about the strategic plan process.
Thank you, Madam. Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to council. So I want to start off by saying that you know, the current strategic plan was always envisioned to be in place to 2020. That's why we had hoped to embark on an update process with the previous council, but then a little thing got in the way called the pandemic. And rightly so, council's input of the day was, this is not the time to be doing community engagement. It will be swayed by the realities that people are struggling and dealing with, and that we need to come out the other side, so to speak, of the pandemic to be able to get a real fruitful community engagement. I think there was also an interest, the fact that the pandemic would only allow us ultimately to do online community engagement, and engagement should be balanced with town hall type formats, in-person types of formats, in, you know, face-to-face, along with now the fact that we have access to a regional tool called Engage Waterloo Region, which the townships are able to, and we've started to use. I think Rayanne Bauman on our team mentioned to council, I think in an email, that we are starting to use that for other projects like the active transportation. We'll be using that for the official plan focus groups and things of that nature. So, you know, we weren't going to be embarking it under the last council, so turn things over now to current day, and it's up to this council to work through a process and work, we would suggest, with the community to do engagement. I guess a little bit of history I'll mention to you is that when I first arrived a number of years ago, you know, the development of a strategic plan was really the development of a corporate plan. And it was really developed between council and senior staff. And over time, what I spoke to council about was, wouldn't it be great to actually develop a strategic plan that involved the community more? And that also was a longer term vision than just 4 years. Now, I can tell you that a lot of my colleagues have a difficult at times with their councils getting them off the 4-year cycle, because many councils like the 4-year cycle. But I respectfully would offer my staff opinion to say, sometimes then it politicizes the strategic plan process too much, because it's about developing a plan that ultimately, you know, you'll work on the 4 years and it will help with your platform. I'm not saying everybody's about that, but you know, that's some of the constructive feedback and criticism those people in the strategic plan, you know, facilitative type of network would provide you in the way of feedback. So take you now to the report in front of you. I thought a lot about the report that I wanted to put in front of you, and you know, I thought the best thing I could do is to say, you know, ideally, all things being considered, it would be great to get through a process that would align and help us inform ultimately the development of the 2024 business plan and budget. However, as you can see from the timeframes, it's an overly ambitious and overly aggressive timeframe. That being said, there's no doubt that we don't want to take several years to do this, but what I've tried to do in the latter stages of the report, I think it's in the conclusion, where I've noted there is an option to all of this, which I would respectfully suggest is to stretch out the timeframes. And the reason I bring that up is because, as members of council will know, the mayor and I met with each of you individually as you were onboarding on, and not all of you, but some of you mentioned, we need to do a strategic plan, but my God, most of us are new. Wouldn't it be nice to maybe get a year under our belt before we need to make a decision on what a longer term 10-year strategic plan would look like? So, I'm here before you tonight to say, yes, I presented you with a staff report that shows a very aggressive and ambitious timeframe, especially to do the level of engagement I'm sure that we all want to do. However, respectfully, I think that can be stretched out. And to give you that option, just in simple terms, there's nothing to stop us from using 2023 to do nothing but community engagement, both in person and online. I mention that because the community engagement is not going to be anything like what I've been involved in the past here. I would say it's the old style was going out to our traditional communities, meeting with the people that we would be able to second or ask to come out to meetings, because I hate to say this, but sometimes it's about sending great personal invitations and getting people to come out from the various community stakeholders, residents groups, rec associations, minor sports groups, that sort of thing. But if the pandemic taught us anything, there's a lot more engagement that needs to happen. The pandemic itself, exposed societal issues, around Black Lives Matters. We saw what the Catholic School Board went through in terms of flying the pride flag and issues that surfaced there. We have the whole issues around truth and reconciliation. We have just the fact that, what we haven't talked about, or I haven't talked with you, is, in the past, we've asked people to come to 3 very strategically located, happen to be in our larger communities, Elmira, St. Jacobs, and Breslau. But there's nothing stopping us other than it may cost a little bit more money to have a facilitator out for more engagement. But if that's what we want, that's what we need to do. So, you may direct that, the plan be modified to say, no, you know what, we would like to have town halls in each of our communities. On top of that is the very specialized engagement in terms, in terms of with the membership of our marginalized communities, and even, our community stakeholder groups, our rec associations, our residents associations, things of that nature. So in summary, you've got an aggressive, ambitious plan before you. But as I said, in simple terms, I think that could be stretched out. And based on the feedback I heard from some of you, I think that's great, because this will be a strategic plan for the next 10 years. Let's take our time and get it right. There's nothing to say that, like, some councils constrain themselves because they want something approved in year 1 because they only have 3 years to execute on it. You don't have that constraint if you're willing to adopt the philosophy that we should be building a much longer range plan, 10 years or more. And then we can take this year to do the community engagement and then use next year to refine some of that engagement and produce a plan that could ultimately be adopted by council in May or June of next year at the latest. So I'll stop there because, in the past, one of the things I've heard from councils is they wanted to take more ownership and involvement of the strategic plan process. And that's what it should be. I don't like the old style, that I first inherited here, which is council and senior staff over a few meetings coming up with strategic plan. No community engagement, no community involvement, none of that. I think it's important to engage not just our residents, but our businesses and our community stakeholder, our community support agencies and things of that nature. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. And if I can just add, I think community engagement is especially important. It's very important that we get started on this. It's long overdue, but I do believe community engagement is important. At the best of times, coming out of the pandemic, I think that's a way to re-engage our communities and help people to sort of come out the other side in a positive way. So I agree with David. We've had lots of chats about that, the importance of community engagement. As we discuss this as a council, my one question that came to mind as David was talking, though, is what do you need as a council in terms of information? As we just came out of budget, but as we head into budget, because we'll start that process in the fall. So maybe thinking about if we're starting the strategic plan and stretching it out, what do you need before we head into budget season and start going there? So we can have a little discussion, questions. Where do you want to go, Councillor Cadeau?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Councillor Schwint, although sends his regrets, did kind of collect some thoughts, and he had asked that I would just get them on the record. So if you'll allow it, I'll just kind of read the email that was sent. Okay. So Councillor Schwint writes that I'm looking forward to the strategic planning process, and he's pleased to see that the staff had laid out a structured process. With the significant changes on the planning side being announced recently by the province, concerned about the timing of our initial public consultation in the May-June. So that's something that you were speaking to. Yes. We still need time to get more details and then more time to get those details to the public. So would the process be better served by delaying the initial public consultation until, say, September, and use the time to better educate staff, council, and the general public about the changes and how they may affect Woolwich before providing feedback that it's essentially going to be overwritten by the provincial policy statement? Or in the consideration of timelines, much to your point, CAO Brenneman, could the May-June consultations focus on one or two aspects of the strat plan that aren't affected? Example, community rec and leisure resource priorities or environmental goals and priorities. Then we could have another round in the fall and hopefully create better discussion. So I'll end it there and just send it back for a general discussion.
Thank you. Mr. Brenneman, maybe you could talk a little bit about how this does or does not tie into the process we're going through right now with the official plan.
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, it'd be nice to be doing the strategic plan and then the official plan flows out afterwards. I mean, that would be the most ideal, but the realities is with the ROP having been, approved not just by the region previously, but now the province, we've got to get on with updating our official plan because ultimately that's guiding our growth. However, I don't disagree with Councillor Schwint's comments through Councillor Cadeau that there will be two very important reports coming to council in May, around mid-May, and that is with respect to the impact of the province's decision on the regional official plan, and also the fact that we have to provide comment back to the province on the combining of the provincial policy statement with the provincial growth plan and what the new provincial policy statements talk about. However, with that timing, my comment would be, yeah, I think not doing any engagement in May is a good idea. And besides that, we need time to get a facilitator in place. And the idea would have been to get somebody in place for June. I think we can still start then, because from my experience, even myself working through some of these sessions with the community and in my past experience, yeah, there's a whole range of things that they want to talk about. You know, and we know some of them already. I think, you know, even on your short time on council that they'll be bringing up. I think really about tonight is it's about, you know, do you want to do the aggressive, ambitious plan, or do you want to take your time and stretch it out? I like stretching it out because I think it'll allow for a much more fulsome community engagement. I think people will appreciate the time and effort that we'll make to do either the face-to-face or the various online engagement that we'll plan.
Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. Through you. I would like to see us wait till September, gather all our information and go out and do proper town halls, give people an opportunity to have information beforehand, and then get a facilitator and do a proper town hall so people can come out, give us their feedback. We can gather that information and then work with it. I think if we start trying to do it too quickly, we're not going to get what we want out of the public. Then you're heading into summer vacation, kids out of school. I would suggest we wait and do it in a proper fashion, because I want to see everybody covered, not just the major centers, but I want all the villages engaged as well, because I think you'll get different perspectives from different areas.
Yep.
I agree with you. How would you see that happening? And maybe that's something we can discuss when we get a facilitator, but would you see one in, you know, maybe Maryhill that takes in Bloomingdale
I'm
and
thinking
or
Bloomingdale, that would pretty much be more of a central point and draw them from all of the villages to one major town hall, because there's not a large enough population in any village to make it, you know, centric to them. It needs to be overall that group of villages, and then do Breslau separately, because I think their issues will be separate. But I really feel we need to do it.
okay. Councillor Grant.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I would agree with Councillor Bryant. I think that a more stretched out process and then a September consultation makes sense. I was really happy to hear Mr. Brenneman kind of touch upon like other minority groups as well, whether it's Black Lives Matters, Indigenous communities. I think we need to take into account those parties as well, and that they may not be showing up at these town hall meetings. And it might be something we need to do on a more individual basis of going out to different community stakeholders or groups to actually have those conversations. So this is all to say, I'm just in support of that longer stretched out process. I think it makes sense if we're looking at it from a 10-year kind of strat plan.
I know too that the best way to get information is to go to people instead of asking people to come to us, which would be a different process. Again, it might mean going out to community events, different community events, and gathering information, or I don't know if the facilitator would do that or if we would, but some kind of process where we actually go where people are gathered and kind of have a presence. Councillor Kiddo.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Through you, I mean, what you're saying kind of twigs something for me. You know, with Engage Waterloo Region, I agree with kind of the general sentiment that maybe being more deliberate with our approach and biding our time is maybe the best approach, but I wouldn't want to lose any momentum, and I would want to make sure that we're continuing to either engage with our community about what they're hoping to see, or at least doing some work behind the scenes, which I know that, you know, CAO Brenneman and his team will be doing. I guess that's all to say, could we not continue to engage with the communities via Engage Waterloo Region and use that, you know, quality feedback as one of those key inputs to direct some of those town halls or subsequent meetings that we would be bringing in a facilitator for?
David?
Yeah, I mean, my first inkling is to answer Councillor Cado's question and to put to council, you know, I think one of the easiest ways to get the ball rolling on engagement, and again, people doing it from the convenience of their own home, is to structure a set of questions that start the engagement process. You know, I mean, even if they're even if they're not the traditional questions, they're more the simple one to say, what does your Woolwich look like, 10 years from now or 20 years from now? What would you like to see changed? What would you like to see improved? However we structure the questions, I think, and again, to get council on board with where we're going is to come back with maybe starting on the online engagement. Because if we're going to stretch out the engagement, the more context and information that you can build and draw on, the more representative and more confident you'll feel it reflects what the community's interest is. And I just have to say this, is that, the traditional ways of us doing things, we really have to reevaluate. A good case in point, in the time I've been here, we've been part of a region-wide collaboration. More recently, Wellbeing Waterloo Region did on all of our collective behalf a community well-being survey. But it was very interesting, council, to hear some of our community stakeholder agencies, our community support agencies throughout the region. Some of them comment back to say, this traditional type of survey didn't reach members of our marginalized communities. Why? Because they were either not aware of the survey, or some of the questions were triggering and put them off. Because some of them ask, about income and profession and all of that. And so I guess it's a reminder that our traditional ways of surveying are not always the best way to make sure that we broadly have input from all cross sections of the community. And yes, what you're highlighting tonight is we need to go to those communities.
So I'm not seeing any more questions. David, you've got a bit of an outline here of process that probably is a very similar process, just stretched out. So from the discussion, what would you see as the next steps?
Well, I think once you're finished with your feedback, I think I'll come back with what a stretched out process would look like. And I'd like to do that in short order, because that will shape the terms of reference I put out for the community engage or the facilitator. Because based on the number and the amount and all of that, that'll impact ultimately the dollars.
Yeah, I think we want to get the facilitator still before summer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Will this be going online? Because we could always start with the online process to get the questions out there and then lead into the in-person afterwards, because there's a lot of people that will not come out in person, but they may give us feedback online.
Yeah, I think online could be through the summer time even.
Well, that's what I was suggesting in answering Councillor Cadeau's is I think we could start with the Engage online survey. What I could commit to is coming back with a revised report based on this input, and also take a first crack at some simple questions that we could start with the online engagement through Engage.
Is that something you'd want the facilitator on board for before we go there, or?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Okay, our next meeting is May 9th. Is that too soon? That's 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, I'll need a bit more time on that.
Can you give us an estimate?
Yeah.
We got the 9th, the 16th, and the 30th of May.
Either the 16th or the 30th.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else before we move on? Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you for that. The next item is summer patio seating on Mill Street, and I'll ask Jenna. There she is. Welcome. And is John Clay here with you?
Good evening, Council. Yes, John should be available by phone. He's multitasking. Yep, he's on. I see him there. He is just going to answer any questions if there are any specifically for him.
Okay, that's great. I can only see people with a video, so if he's trying to say something and I don't acknowledge him, just jump in.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Alex or Dolores, am I able to share my screen? I just wanted to show one image.
Yeah, Alex is on it.
Yes. Okay, it looks like it can. Sorry about that here. Okay. So good evening, council. The report in front of you requests an ongoing closure for the purpose of the downtown Elmira BIA's public seating area on a seasonal basis for the term of this council. Previously, the BIA and staff have requested the closures each year, which is time consuming. And so last year, council requested staff come back with a report that included a plan to close the road permanently. So we worked alongside the BIA, who determined that the public seating area would be used really only seasonally, and therefore that the road should only be closed during the warmer months. Having a semi-permanent or term of council closure approval allows staff at both the township and region, as well as the BIA, ample time to plan for a clean closure. And this includes the elimination of barriers down Arthur Street. I think, just pointing out a couple highlights from the closure itself is, and the need, I'd say that it should be noted the Elmira Core Urban Design Study identified this portion of Mill Street as an opportune location for enhanced streetscape with enhanced design and furnishings. And the BIA have worked hard to enhance the space with, as you can see in the photos, Muskoka chairs, umbrellas, garbage receptacles, barriers, and planters. And the township has supported the BIA and the space with picnic tables and the coordination of the closure. We hope that the enhanced streetscape design will be further elevated through the eventual Arthur Street reconstruction. But for the now and here today, the BIA look forward to more community patio seatings in that space where they plan to add events and other activities to attract more people to the downtown. Currently, most guests use this space during lunch hour. Sometimes if I'm out there, well, in the past, there's been a few other folks eating their lunch, but more so after 5 p.m. and throughout weekends. You can often see people, younger residents grabbing their ice cream or other takeout and enjoying it in the space there. So I think really just bringing this back this year, hopefully for a final presentation to council for this term, so that we don't need to come back every year with the request to close it again, so that both staff from the township and the region, along with BIA board members, have ample time to plan for that space. So with that, I'll stop and open it up to any questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? No? Councillor Cadeau.
Not a question, more a comment. I just want to say thank you to members of the BIA and township staff who have done such an excellent job really coordinating this and getting this launched. I think it's a wonderful utilization of that space, especially in the summer. It's a wonderful chance for us to really enjoy some of those establishments in our downtown core. So with that, I'm happy to move this recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Grant. Any other discussion? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a couple of tender awards, and I will call on Carter McGuire, Manager of Operations. Welcome, Carter. We'll start with the gravel tender award.
Perfect. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I bring to you the tender award for our gravel program. Our gravel program is one of our larger projects that we run each year through the maintenance side. This is for the supply and delivery of granular M to our gravel road network. Traditionally, we used to do a 10-year cycle through the township. We group our roads to try and optimize the delivery costs for that material. Through a roads needs study, it was determined that a 3-year cycle would be the optimal amount for application of this gravel. But knowing that it would be a significant cost to the township, we've kind of compromised and brought through a 7-year cycle. The area that we're planning on doing this year is in the northwest corner of the township. It hasn't seen gravel for 10 or 11 years. The struggle with the gravel road network is every year you're going to lose some of that material from the roadway. In this tender award, it is for $17 and $17.20 per tone. We will roughly apply 18,000 tone on this project, bringing a total cost for the contracted services to, with HST rebate, to $314,216.97. That does put us in a deficit of $4,000, $4,216 for the contracted services, but we are confident that through the loose top budget, we will be able to make up that shortfall in that budget item. With that, I'm going to open up to any questions you have about this program.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? No. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Bryant, seconded by Councillor Grant. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And you're looking for a crew cab.
Yes. So again, before you is the request for the award to Blue Mountain Chrysler for the purchase of a 1-ton crew cab with aluminum dump box. A little bit of background on this vehicle is that it was brought forward to council and approved in the 2022 budget. But as we all were aware with the COVID restrictions on vehicles, we were not able to get a single bidder when we put it out to tender in 2022. Because of the shortfalls in vehicles and that there was no build times in the factories, we were not able to go back out to tender in the 2022 budget year. And this was carried forward in the 2023 budget year. This vehicle was identified as a need when we brought additional staffing into the Public Works Department. We are currently short of vehicles for our staff, holding on to vehicles that are deficient. And then the purchase of this crew cab would allow us, to our staff, to be able to go out to perform work as a group of 3, where traditionally our vehicles are only a 2-person cab, and we often have to take 2 vehicles to take 3 to 4 staff to site. So with that, I can open up any or answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, questions? Councillor Cadeau.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, through you. To staff, we heard some presentations today regarding climate change. What's the fuel source, I guess, is the question of this vehicle?
So this is a gasoline powered vehicle. It's considered one of the heavy duty lines of the truck world. So a 1-ton vehicle would have the dual rear wheels. That was a tongue twister. I'll have to try that one again later tonight. So it is gasoline. At this point, there is no options for a hybrid or another alternative source for this vehicle to meet our needs.
Thank you for highlighting that you may be able to use 1 vehicle instead of 2. I think that's a good comment as well.
It's not efficient, and also, yes, we're using 2 vehicles when we're able to then, if we could transport staff, to bring that crew cab into our fleet would help us, that we would be utilizing fewer vehicles to do some of the work that we perform.
Anyone else? Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Cadeau, seconded by Councillor Burgess. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, you too. Mayor's report on regional matters. I have a number of things from our last regional meeting. We spent, well, actually, this is not from our meeting, but I've had some discussions, particularly with Mayor Nowak, about community safety zones. And so I haven't had a chance to run this by David, but I think we need to get a little more information on how community safety zones are identified and what kind of criteria. It sounds like what I understood was quite restricted. It's not as restricted as I anticipated. And that leads into automatic speed enforcement, because currently that's only available for community safety zones and school zones. Right now, that is also restricted by the numbers that we can process and that the region approves. But that all needs to sort of come together to work on some of our speeding issues. Councillor Bryant.
Question for you, Madam Mayor. There was a report in the paper, I believe, a couple of days ago saying we had 10,000 outstanding tickets we can't process. Is that correct?
I wouldn't want to say the number exactly, but there are a number provincially that and locally that can't be processed, and that's part of the problem. So what we need is some change in legislation so that it is handled more like I believe it's like a parking ticket. Yeah. And so it just goes through a different process and doesn't type the courts in the same way. So, but that has to happen provincially. So we've been advocating through AMO and Roma and a number of different venues to have some changes made to that. Yeah, you've probably all read the news. We spent a considerable time on the Lancaster Street exit. I don't need to say anything more about that. And we spent quite a bit of time on our grants programs and how that plays out as well. Specific to us here, we accepted a tender for the Sawmill Road in Bloomingdale from River Road to Snyder's Flats that is scheduled to start May 5th and finish in July of 2024. Yeah.
Sorry, since that's my area, I'm
Yeah.
going to ask. What does that entail? What are they doing exactly? They're just paving, or are they going to put
Yeah.
the lights in at St. Charles that was
There's-
promised about 12 years ago?
I didn't write everything down, but the lights at
The lights are
St.
going
Charles
in?
are going in. There's curb and gutters, sidewalks.
Good.
They're underground. Do you know? Yeah, but there's considerable work. That's why it's taking over a year to get it done.
Perfect. When are they starting? Sorry.
May
May.
5th.
Perfect. Thank you.
And the second one that is local is the roundabout for Floridel Road and Church Street. And that's to start in May and end this September. So that's a quicker one. And the other thing that we put forward was a petition, or to petition the provincial government to exclude addresses of candidates and contributors on the public sites after a campaign, just for safety, basically, of everyone involved. So there'll be a letter going to the provincial government on that. Those are the things that I pulled out from our recent meetings. I know Councillor Cadeau, you had some questions for me, and I've tried to put together some information, so fire away and I'll do my best.
Thanks, Mayor Shantz. I don't have anything prepared in front of me. I mean, it related to a couple of questions I got from constituents related to a staffing report and the availability of information with respect to budget deliberation. So there was media attention around it. I had shared the link with council just to bring their attention to this. And I was just hoping that you could speak to it both as your role on regional council and potentially as your role on the police services board. Just so we have the same access to information that we can share with others and make sure that everybody has an appreciation of maybe what transpired.
Sure, I'll do my best on that. First, what I'd like to do is just a governance 101 for police services, because it's a little different from council. And so I've sort of cut and pasted pieces from different documents. So I'll do some reading and then try to answer any other questions. Every municipality must provide adequate and effective police services in accordance with its needs. And the council, so that would be regional council, not the board, has exclusive authority to choose the method of policing, which means we can choose regional policing, or we can go to the OPP, for example, as a region. That's the council decision. There is an expectation that policing operates separately from government interference. The operation of the service, the operation part lies with the chief. So regional council can't direct the chief and the board can't direct the chief on operational matters. The board consists of 7 members, and that's when the population of the region exceeded 300,000. The region applied to the lieutenant governor and council to be approved to increase the board to 7. So we have 7 members right now. 3 are from regional council, and that's the way it's set up, that there would be 3 from regional council, 3 appointed by the province, and 1 additional member appointed by regional council who is not a member of regional council. So yeah, again, the general principle is that the board has governance or supervisory authority over policing matters, but no authority over the operations day to day. We can provide policies similar to what we do here, right? We provide policies and we let David take care of the operations. This is actually more restrictive than that. So the board's overriding duty is to provide adequate and effective police services in the municipality. A significant element of its responsibilities include providing accountability and transparency in police service delivery as opposed to directing actual service delivery. And adequate and effective police services must include crime prevention, law enforcement, assistance to victims of crime, public order maintenance, and emergency response. And also the board is required to prepare a business plan for police services once every 3 years. So those are the pieces. Our police services does some extra pieces too in emergency, in communications, and I wonder if I have that somewhere. I may get to that if you ask a question. So I guess I will stop now. In terms of budgeting and who pays for policing, the board is required to submit operating and capital estimates to council annually. The formats of the estimates can be determined by council. Council can establish the overall budget, but are not bound by the estimates. So council cannot approve or disapprove specific items in the budget. So police services board provides a budget to council. Council can say yay or nay basically to the bottom line, but can't change anything within the budget. However, if the board is not satisfied that the budget is sufficient to maintain the number of police officers or provide adequate and effective policing, then the board may request OCPC, Ontario Citizens. Sorry, it's an acronym here and I don't have. Yeah, thank you. Ontario Civilian Police Commission, thank you, to conduct a hearing. So with that, that's my 101 on police governance. You want to ask your question again?
Well, I mean, a lot of the questions really stemmed from the level of access that regional councillors would have had to that full staffing report prepared by KPMG. So I guess the question would be, were the regional councillors provided access to that information related to? So I don't know if you can speak to that.
Yeah, I can't. we were given access to it. But it's primarily an operations report. So if you go back, the board and regional council really can't direct operations. So it was a report, and most of the recommendations in there would be considered as operational. So we got regional council got the report on April 12th. So there was a bit of a communication gap there. We have a new, half of our regional council is new. We have a new police chief. We've been going through hiring. So not to make excuses, but we have been assured, we've had discussions at the board, we've had discussions at regional council, and we will all do better.
I appreciate that. I don't really have any other questions, and I appreciate some of the difficulties associated with coming forward with a budget. I think that one of the key concerns from constituents was the fact that one of the central recommendations, from my understanding based on that report, was that the police could go forward and hire based on some of the surpluses that they've been having. And maybe that hadn't been communicated in a forthright manner. So I'm happy to hear that there will be efforts to ensure that, that access to information is apparent in there. So thank you.
Yeah, I can add from my perspective in terms of the hiring and the surpluses. So some of the surpluses in the last couple of years have stemmed from actually not fulfilling our total complement. So some of that comes from difficulty in recruiting, but the rest is also attrition. And so the way those things line up, just similar as to what it would be here if we had some staffing positions that we couldn't fill, that money would sit there as a surplus, and it doesn't really mean that we can use it in the next year because we're going to need it to annualize. So that's where a lot of that has come from. Okay, David.
Yeah, just from a broader perspective, one of the things I wanted to mention to council is that now with this report being released, and thank you for sharing that media report, because it hadn't yet been circulated officially to the township. So that was my first review of it. What I can tell you is the process happened last year. All of the townships advocated for some special meetings where we could provide some input on specific rural needs. I'm still making my way through this KPMG document, but I'm pleased to see that they were turning their attention to, I'll give one unique example. Right now, the township of Woolwich is split between two divisions, North Division and Central Division. North Division covers part of our township. Central Division covers Breslaw. It doesn't make it easy when you're trying to coordinate speeding and enforcement and other needs that we have across the township. But there were other input that we provided in terms of the need for appropriate resources to deal with one of the number one concerns in our area, which is traffic, speeding, traffic calming and speeding and those sorts of things. The other thing with the closing of the Elmira detachment, we commented about the fact that we could, like other municipalities throughout Ontario, perhaps offer community space at one of our facilities where people could know that, say, for example, if we were able to accommodate regular hours, maybe not the regular hours that were at the Elmira detachment, but at the Woolwich Memorial Center, where people could know that there would be the opportunities, or even the police would know there'd be opportunity for space. So what we look forward to now is, it's my understanding is obviously This was KPMG's recommendation. I think now we look forward to seeing what will actually be produced by Chief Crowell and his team in terms of what recommendations will come forward. I expect that to be similar to the fact that the 4 townships cooperated on a joint service delivery review. KPMG produced that report, but staff developed an implementation program for council to execute on some of the recommendations. So I just wanted to use this opportunity, not to jump in the fray of regional council and the budget side of things, but to give you as a new council the information that we participated, and we look forward to continued participation to how best the future of rural policing looks like to best address the needs that we know are unique to the townships in terms of our community needs and assessments.
Thanks. And there is an expectation that the board will hear back from the chief on what they're going to do about the recommendations this spring yet. Any other council reports or updates? Councillor Cadeau?
Thank you. Yeah, I have one. If I can pull it here, it's not. Okay. In association with Councillor Grant, happy to announce that Woolwich 2S LGBTQ+ ad hoc working group had its first meeting with the assistance of staff, of course. So thank you to Clerk Smith. Did a wonderful job coordinating that, and we're happy to get that work underway.
Thank you. Anything else? Anything from the outstanding activity list? No, there is no notice of motion. We have a number of bylaws that are listed on your agenda. Someone like to move that the following bylaws in the hands of the clerk be read a first, second, third time and finally passed, and that they be numbered as bylaw number 33-2023 to 39-2023, and that they be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with a corporate seal, and you can read those on your agenda. I'm not going to read them. Councillor Bryant, seconded by Councillor Burgess. All those in favor? And that's carried. And that brings us to the end of our agenda. So if I could ask for a meeting to adjourn, Councillor Cadeau, seconded by Councillor Grant. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Meeting adjourns to meet again in regular session on Tuesday, May 16th, 2023. And of course, we'll have committee of the whole before that. Closing remarks. I have to turn the page. Council would like to thank all who participated or tuned into the meeting tonight on our YouTube live stream. I will remind council to stay connected until we receive confirmation that the live stream has stopped. Good night, everyone.